Asket's Explanations, Part 2. Translation English Translation Explanation. Written down on the 2nd of September 1964 in Marauli, India, with Asket's help.
Asket's explanations and remarks took a very long time, and many things were also mentioned and explained afterwards, about which I must continue to maintain strictest silence. Even if I wanted to change this, I could not do so, because firstly I made a promise, and secondly everything was secured by a security block, so I would not be able to talk about it, even willingly. I do not know the nature of the security block, and it is only known to me that I would not be able to speak if I wanted to do so without permission. I also know this much about it, that the security block, which Asket has created through a device that seems a little strange to me, is connected with my sense of duty and other things in my consciousness. That is all I really know about it. I must confess that Asket's explanations seemed outrageous to me at the time, and that I thought I was only dreaming. I always expected to wake up from a dream and be pulled back into reality. But the longer Asket's explanations lasted, the more I became aware that everything was already reality, and that I was not subject to any dreams. From time to time I pinched my earlobes until they were bloody. I burned my left hand deeply with a cigarette and felt the sudden pain. Several times I also reached for Asket's hands and squeezed hard. I heard her painful sounds, felt the warmth of her hands and their mutual pressure. I did many other things, but each time I had to realize that everything was real and that I was not dreaming. When night had already fallen, I asked Asket to roam the mountains with me for a while, because we had stayed in the ship the whole time so far. She agreed, and so we let ourselves be carried out of the ship and wandered through the wild, rugged mountains. In the somewhat cool night air, my heated head slowly cooled, causing the excessive heat of excitement to subside. Wordlessly, we walked hand in hand through the dusky night and moved very far away from the two ships. It must have been 2 hours during which we had wandered so wordlessly. We had just rounded a large boulder when Asket suddenly stopped and held me back. Not 3 meters in front of us a fire was glowing faintly, while a figure had just leapt towards us, waving a rifle. He spoke hastily to us. I did not understand a word of it because the man, obviously a European, spoke English, a language I did not yet know. Asket, however, knew the language and calmed the man down, who then began to speak in German, so that I could also understand everything. This man, who was about 45-50 years old, was a Russian citizen who had been wandering the world alone and lonely for many years. He had already traveled to many countries and was now camping alone in the Jordanian desert mountains near the Dead Sea. When we suddenly appeared, he was frightened and believed himself endangered by some dark elements. So he came at us with his rifle. Quickly, however, we were able to clarify the situation and then sat down together around his campfire. He offered us tea in a small metal pot, and suddenly I realized that I was hungry and had not eaten anything since early morning. As if the man had noticed my thoughts, he offered us something edible, and ravenous, I devoured everything. Asket also seemed to suffer from the same malady, for she also ate the dried bread and dried fruit with an obvious appetite. We must have been with the man for an hour when we wanted to go back. But then he stopped us and explained that he had been wandering alone for many years, and had never been able to join human beings. He distrusted human beings and would therefore avoid them, which is why he had also set up camp here in this lonely place. Since many years now, while we were together, strange feelings had begun to stir in him. He could not explain it all, but he found us very sympathetic human beings, which had never happened to him before, or only very rarely. He had already learned to hate human beings in his adolescence, and now this change had suddenly taken place in him with regard to us, so that he would be very happy if we could stay with him a little longer, or at least meet him again in a few days. Already holding Asket's hand again, I felt her handshake getting stronger. Then she spoke softly and gently to the man, and made a promise for both of us that we would meet him again in the same place, and at the same time on the 7th of February, which was already in a few days. With this promise we said goodbye to him and returned to the ships, for the ship that had brought me here from my home was still there. By now it was very late, and I was also very tired, so I lay down in the armchair that Asket had offered me to sleep on, which had been converted into a couch. She also lay down in her couch, which I could only just notice before I sank into a deep sleep. It was already broad daylight when I woke up again and saw that Asket had conjured up drinkable and edible things from somewhere. We sat down comfortably at a table-like structure that had been pulled out of a ship's wall and feasted on a hearty breakfast. What I ate and drank I could not define, but it was very good, even if everything was completely foreign to me. The potion was slightly yellowish-white and a little thick, and was probably some kind of juice from a fruit I did not know. The food also seemed to be made of fruits, and also of some kind of vegetables. The taste of everything was very foreign to me, even though everything once again seemed somehow familiar. Everything was excellent, however, and it tasted delicious to me. Before breakfast, Asket brought a large container of cool, clear water from somewhere, which she carried out of the ship and placed on the ground not far away. Like little children, we then splashed around with the delicious water and cleaned ourselves with it. It was a very fun morning toilet. Until the evening, we spent the time inside the ship again, while Asket again taught me many new things, which no longer seemed so foreign to me as they had the day before. It was just amazing to me that I got used to everything so quickly, and that everything became second nature to me in such a short time. I seemed to have known Asket for thousands of years. We were already so familiar with each other. And I no longer cared at all about the ship and its details, etc. So much of it had become familiar to me in the meantime in all those hours. I can even say that I was already so disinterested in the ship that I could speak of being bored when I still looked at it.
Asket's explanation on the 4th of February 1953. Word-for-word rendering by Asket's help. Written down on the 4th of September 1964 in Marauli, India. Partial excerpt from the complete statement. The part of Asket's statement that is not written down is covered by the obligation of silence and must therefore not be mentioned.
The entire existence of all creational universes, world bodies and life forms, etc., can be embedded in a perfect mathematics that works like an infallible machinery and causes life to become or perish. The elementary formulae rest in the mathematically most important numbers, 3, 7, and 12. All calculations in these three numbers always and all the time give one and the same result in the equation itself, and the equation is a perfect round that can be calculated infallibly in multiples of 7x7. The entirety of mathematics is based in a closed ring which can be calculated at any time by the numbers 3, 7, 12, and 7x7, since the primordial is itself a perfect roundness, perfect to the smallest degree, a roundness of the relatively perfect in mastery of the becoming and passing away in the creation itself. However, it is not permitted for me to explain this in detail, and thereby bring the solution of the great mystery to the earth humans, for in doing so I would be violating the laws of the primordial being itself, for it is in the will of the primordial being that an evolving life form should itself find its way to the solution of these mysteries, in order to attain the knowledge which will enable the life forms concerned of the most diverse universes and worlds to apply and use their knowledge in accordance with nature and according to the creational guidelines. For if a life form were to attain great knowledge and wisdom at too early a stage in its own development, then an inevitable and unstoppable catastrophe would be the effect and consequence, as it is threatening at present also on the earth, because through the unconscionability of the malevolent extraterrestrial intelligences already mentioned several times, these imparted to some Earth's human beings, so-called scientists, a knowledge of which they were not yet able to cope, namely, the knowledge of the secret of the foundation stones of life, the atom, through which the atomic bomb could be created by revealing this secret. Once in possession of this dangerous weapon of destruction, it was only a short step to its use and a repetition of the earlier events in Sodom and Gomorrah. On the 6th of August 1945, the first of these deadly weapons was detonated, and 3 days later the second. As a result, the earthly atmosphere was impregnated with clouds of death, which at that time affected the whole of nature, caused climatic changes, and disturbed weather patterns. The effects of these explosions, which will continue to occur again and again, will manifest themselves in many forms in the coming decades, including in human life. Many lives of fauna and flora will mutate, and also the human life form will suffer malignant mutations and cruel diseases. This evil misery has already begun with the explosions and will continue to spread in the times to come. Earthly science is fully aware of this, but the scientists and others in charge make no effort whatsoever to change the consequences of their madness or to protect themselves from new offenses. On the contrary, they will continue to work in the same form of destruction, detonating atomic bombs again for test purposes as well as commercially, thus driving the Earth into even greater danger. And since this unreasonableness is so very great, neither I nor any other life forms of extraterrestrial origin may reveal secrets which would enable the earthly life form human being to produce material, human-like or machine-like as well as gene-manipulated life, or also to penetrate into great heights of consciousness-based levels. In particular, the human being of your present home world, the Earth, is in a stage of development in which he or she must be denied all higher knowledge in these relations, for in this human being glows and blazes the highly bred insanity and madness of lust for power, of selfishness and self-importance, of ruin and destruction. He or she walks on a path that is deviant and alien to nature. If these human beings, the Earth humans, are to be helped, then this can only happen if they leave their ways of destruction and perdition, and finally free themselves from the delusion of religions, the hunger for power and profit, etc., so that the dark enslaving powers no longer find a target. A complete transformation of the Earth human's way of thinking is necessary in order to be able to follow the laws of creation. And only when the Earth human gives up his or her self-delusion will they become capable of cognition, and thereby observe, learn about, and follow the laws of nature, and thereby also find the way to the creational laws and recommendations, and to follow them. But until they have given up their selfishness and taken the path to truth, they cannot be helped from outside the Earth. Even then, the knowledge of very important secrets cannot yet be revealed to the Earth humans, when the danger of the impending catastrophe will have been averted. Only then will the human beings of this world have to learn to make the truth of creation, of the spirit and of eternity their own. But it will be a very long and very hard teaching, and you will have to proclaim this truth as a prophet. The time will be short for you, my friend, when the great day will come, when you will receive permission from me to speak. It will only be a span of a little more than 2 decades before your time comes and you are to begin your mission. Your task will be very difficult and full of slander against you and your mission. But it will be a relief to you that you will have friends around you and a steadily growing group that will serve the good cause and the truth. It will also be to your advantage that by then, despite the negative religious fact, the study community I have mentioned in Germany will have done very good and very important work, which may not be of benefit to you, but to your task, so that your seed will soon bear abundant fruit. Some smaller and larger groups will already have formed all over the earth by that time, and will carry out their corresponding work in order to create enlightenment and to have the most urgent effect. Even if, in the process, much falsehood and deceit as well as slander will be spread about you and your mission and proofs as well as about us. Do not, however, mentally look for great help from these groups, and from such organizations, etc., for as they are all half blinded to the real truth by the scheming machinations of the evil-minded extraterrestrial group, they will give you only limited help, if any. The might of the Ba'ath beings, the aforementioned malevolent intelligences in the pyramid at Giza, coming from the distant Ring Nebula region and descendants of the ancestors of Earth's humanity, is very great, and everywhere they know how to exert their influence. Thus they spare no intrigues and no infamous machinations, and use even the enlightenment efforts of Earth humans to achieve the aims of their madness and greed. When your time comes, predetermined human beings will come into contact with whom you will form an authoritative group in Europe. In due time you will receive a corresponding call for this. In little more than 20 years, you will already have to make the first contact with the coming group members, because the situation will require it. You will, however, be persecuted and no longer be sure of life, but you will nevertheless not have to interrupt the closed contact with the members in any way, and you will only appear with your mission because you will be called upon to do so again, and from another side. This will not happen through me, but through another life form from this universe, through those human beings who for the time being will call themselves Pleiadians. Despite the fact that this has already been established, and it is also obvious that you will be constantly sought for your life, you must make every effort to ensure that your mission is not interrupted. This is necessary for the very specific reasons of your destiny. The coming contact with the Pleiadians means for you an introduction and an acquaintance with your personality. For the reason that these contacts with them and with us are a testimony to you that certain circles and group members can testify that you did not know about the truth and about our existence only at the time of your official appearance, but that you already knew about everything much earlier than this, will be claimed about you from the evil side, in order to beat you into exile and to destroy you. The very fact of these facts speaks for the reasonable human being that all my words and all my explanations written down by you must be genuine. For what earth human or any other life form would take upon themselves a difficult mission and bring up certain evil things and facts only to be persecuted and threatened of life or deprived of life by evil-minded elements? But you will not break off the closed contact with us again, but will continue it, and in little more than 2 decades will also make a new contact with the Pleiadians. All this, however, can only be truth if you allow the actual events of life and their things to guide and direct you. This is a fact which must be apparent to all thinking human beings with sufficient reason and intellect, so that you may thereby give an unshakable testimony to certain groups and human beings in this respect, which will be of great use to you.